Hi, and welcome to a new episode of the State of the Net podcast. I'm Paolo Valdemarin.
And I'm Ewan Semple.
And this time, I'm recording from Italy.
Wow.
I moved here.
We're international.
Yeah. And the main reason for the delay this episode is that I came back here. I brought with me my big condenser microphone. And I had a USB interface here, and which I've not been using for probably a year. And I got here and realized that it's not supported anymore by the system, so I had to buy a new one. And it's, I think I bought it in 2007, so, 13 years for a device is good enough. But it's a bloody USB interface.
It's not exactly got moving parts, has it? Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, because I was also chasing my tail with technology in terms of the cabling, it turns out, for my microphone, because I tried using it on the iPad, on the iPhone, on the Mac, and it had the same problem on every device. And then I thought, well, it must be the cable. So I too am on a new cable. So I've just thought, pal, if there's a lot of people listening to nothing, it hasn't worked.
It's this thing about technology getting old. We have been test driving cars because we need to change our car here.
Oh yeah.
And the car we currently have is a Ford Ka, which we bought in year 2000. So in a couple of months, that car is going to be 20 years old.
Wow.
And the CD player in the car works perfectly. Well, not perfectly. I mean, sometimes it have a little bit of glitches when you put in CDs in and out. But if you think about it, the CD player has been sitting in the car in weather for 20 years and it still works fine. And I've been looking to all these new cars, and they are, and of course, it's a whole new world out there with cars. I mean, you can connect your phone. You can do. They don't have the dashboard. Is a screen that moves and animation. It's so cool. But I was thinking, there's no way whatever I'll be using as a phone in 20 years is going to be compatible with the car I'm going to buy today.
Well, talking about compatibility, my dad's got an old Mercedes soft top, and I was in it with him the other day there, and I said, what's that slot on the top of your dashboard for? And I put my finger in it, and it turns out it's a VHS player in a car.
Exactly. But what I'm thinking is that if it was just for the entertainment, okay, you can keep using CDs, or pretty much the only place where we have a CD player was the car at the moment.
Yeah.
But now navigation is based on your phone, and unlocking the car can be based on your phone. So all these things based on your phone, but the car probably is going to outlast every standard. Well, I suppose that the whole purpose of this is they don't want you to the car to outlast all the standards. But yeah.
I was going to say that the car itself is increasingly a software product, especially with Teslas and things. And so even with mine, which is a standard diesel Honda, there's so much that can go wrong electronically that's so critical to the car. I can't fix the car. We must be joking. Even the AA turn up, lift the bonnet, and there's this big black box that they set the computer into. It's madness.
Yeah. All the cars we have been looking at are various type of hybrid, so that makes it even more complicated. You open the button, and it's just like, all right, you just shut it down. There's no idea how that works. But we're not against technology, are we?
Indeed.
And this bright future, a couple of days ago, as probably everybody has heard, Twitter was hacked, and it could have been a war, if you think.
Yeah, well, yeah, I know. Well, we said it's funny because we used the word hacked. I used it myself a moment ago, but in a sense, it wasn't hacked. It was what they call it, social engineering. So I was just reading up about it this morning. So it turns out it's a bunch of youngsters who got into getting hold of short Twitter handles, which is just as well they didn't get hold of me, isn't it, really? And then sort of realised there was a value in them, started trading them to get bitcoins, and then it sort of took off, and they realised they'd get more money if they got celebrities, and then they get hold of somebody on Twitter, and the next thing you know. And as you say, I mean, one of the pundits was making the point that their use of it was just trying to encourage people to pay bitcoins for something. But if they had chosen to, and they'd got hold of Biden's account or whatever, they could have caused some really serious, damage before anybody could do anything to stop it.
Yeah, or think about they could have done stuff on the stock exchange. They could have made way. I think they calculated that they made about $130,000, which is, I mean, they could have made way more than that.
And I think most of that's traceable, and it's clear where it came from and who bought it, sort of thing. So but apparently somebody was saying why wasn't Trump's account hacked, but apparently he's got special security on his after that Twitter employee shut him down a couple of years ago.
Anyway, not very good for Twitter.
But actually, Trump posts such inflammatory stuff anyway. You'd be hard pushed to make up something worse. And I was sharing a post from The Onion saying that they're on the verge of collapse because they feel unable to make up anything crazier than what's actually happening in the world at the moment.
Yeah. Well, in that case, the hack is at a higher level in the stack, I would say.
Yes. But it's kind of interesting how we all, going back to the cars, and I suppose not unrelated to Twitter either, but we get we're racing into this brave new world that's got so many clever things in it, and we get seduced by all the clever things. And I was seduced the other day there on Amazon, as happens regularly, by a clever thing which was a pop-up beach tent. And yesterday on the beach, breezy day on the beach, the thing popped up, fine, no problem. But could I get the bloody thing to pack up again? And, you can imagine, you conjure up the image of me wrestling with this thing, trying to get it to collapse in a high wind, eventually giving up, just ramming it into a bag and storming off the beach in a grump. And it's part of, I think, this whole sort of thing that we're more and more experiencing of the cars. It's true as well. If the car goes wrong, I can't do anything with the car. I'm lost. In the old days, I could try cleaning spark plugs and things just to feel as if I was doing something. And I reckon there is a sort of, and this is how it relates to Twitter, there's a kind of building rage almost at our powerlessness that we've sort of made for ourselves by trying to make ourselves more powerful with technology. It's clearly a stress on a lot of people, I think. I mean, even just down to the level of not being able to use your phone. You hear people effing and blinding at their technology because they can't get it to do what they want. And then, of course, when it goes wrong, we're at sea. We can't cope.
I wonder if it's related to... There are a whole number of YouTube channels of people restoring old things, or there is this amazing... I have no idea what the story is, but there is this old Chinese guy in the forest who builds things with bamboo and 3 tools, and he builds a bridge, he built a table, he built it's amazing. And these are long videos with just this guy who doesn't say anything. He just sits there and builds this thing, and I've been watching videos like that for hours because I'm just fascinated with the whole process.
Lock-in's not been good for you, has it, Paolo?
Yeah, maybe. I mean, I'm doing much less than that now that I'm here in real nature, as opposed to when I was back in London. Yeah. I mean, I guess there is an appetite for controllable things, and
well, maybe it's part of the whole retro, back to vinyl, back to paper. It might be part of that as well.
Well, I guess that there are more and more layers of interface between us and technology, and it on one side it makes it way more powerful. You can do more things. It's less risky, but on the other side, it can make it boring or less exciting or very frustrating. It's a little bit like one of the things we noticed driving all these new cars is that the steering is so strange, and you realize that this is because it's electronic steering. So basically, there is a electric motor steering for you. And all these modern cars could be turned into self-driving car. I mean, you could steer the wheels without anybody sitting there.
Yes.
And you realize that even that direct connection between you and the wheels, now it's way less direct.
And it's interesting, isn't it? In the same way as audiophiles disparage CDs because you can hear the artifacts produced by the digitization, or the bits that are missing because of the digitization. It's that direct analog contact with the world. And it always fascinates me how in cars, I love driving and I do a lot of driving, and I'm sort of always noticing things while I'm driving. And it's just that fact that you can tell whether the road's getting slippy through your tyres, multiple bits of metal, the seat, your backside, and your brain somehow manages to interpret this and knows that the road's just getting a bit slippier. And you're right, because I think it's less likely to transfer through a digitised medium, isn't it, in a way?
Yeah, which probably it's overall a good thing, given that most people can't drive a car. So probably in most cases, a computer can do better.
Even many who are.
But if you wanted to have that feeling of control, you have to give it up, and probably you're replacing it with other things. So interesting.
Yeah, it's funny because I have a very that was a complete overstatement. I was going to say I have a Zen-like approach to driving. Ask my family, that slips on a regular basis, but. But I tend to drive off cruise control a lot of the time, so I'll just try to optimise the driving. In fact, I've just had the car serviced, and the garage yet again expressed amazement that after 2 years and 40,000 miles, I've only used 10% of the brakes. And that's because I'm constantly anticipating and working out what's happening ahead of me. And it's partly out of this OCD thing of trying not to have to use the accelerator and therefore coming off cruise control. So I'm constantly watching what's ahead, what's behind, who's overtaking me. And then you'll sort of overtake, or you'll know that you've got enough speed that you need to overtake somebody who's probably sitting in the middle lane with nothing inside them anyway, so you're not well disposed to them anyway. And then you sort of pull out and you're starting to pass them, and then they start to accelerate so that you can't pull in front of them. That's when I lose the Zen-like composure. But I find myself thinking, God, the sooner this all gets automated and the cars just work it out for themselves, the better.
It's interesting because I must say that probably the first realm of life where I started to get a little bit more zen has been with driving. Back in the days when I was driving a lot. So, I would drive for 2,000 kilometers in a day, and I would do that every week, and because I would go to Milano, I will always drive, and it's the type of thing where, if you keep getting mad at people, if you're driving that much, you just go crazy. So you start getting interested in other things, and one of those things is okay, can I get home? And here we have the trick that gas is cheaper across the border in Slovenia, so you try to go to Milan and come back on a tank.
Right.
So it's especially important to drive carefully. I mean, I remember driving with the thing of not only you never ever brake. I mean, braking is the last resort. Yeah. But also this accelerating, just having there is that sweet spot where you can actually keep it in a. What is interesting is that some of these new cars actually have computers that help you, that train you to drive like that.
I love it.
So they give you advice, especially when you have a hybrid with electric motors, and of course the electric motor can help a lot there.
Mm-hmm.
They're basically telling you, oh, don't push too hard if you're going up the hill, or it's basically they can help you learn the best ways of optimizing, which I think is a good.
Yeah, well, and actually the other thing you're just talking about, the length of journeys that you were doing. As I was just saying, my elderly mother's in a care home, and I'm visiting her regularly, and it's a 2.5 hour journey in either direction. And it's funny how, because I've spent most of the last year driving professionally, where my legal working day was 9 hours with only a 45-minute break in the middle of it, and in which I'd quite often do 10 hours or more, because there's certain circumstances you can do that. So, I would think nothing of doing that 4 or 5 days a week. So it's funny now, because just driving 2.5 hours there, 2.5 hour back, sort of feels like half a day. And it's just a thing of perspective, isn't it? To other people that would feel like quite a long journey and a big commitment. But to me, I just think it's an opportunity to listen to an audiobook,
Now, what is interesting is, on my side, is that I found out a couple of days ago that I don't have a valid driving license. I mean...
Oh, really?
Technically, let's say that my Italian driving license expired in March, but it's valid until the end of August, because they have moved all the expirations because of the COVID situation. But I found out that I cannot renew it in Italy, because now I'm a resident in the UK. And of course, I cannot exchange with the UK driving license anymore, because it has expired. So I don't know. I have no idea but on the 1st of September, I won't be able to drive a car. I won't be allowed to drive a car anywhere. Wow. Which is going to be probably a bit of
where you
especially
live,
because I don't want.
No.
Well, the thing is that I don't care about driving in the UK. I don't want to drive in the UK. I never did it, and I never will, as far as I mean, my plan for the UK was self-driving cars will become available by the time I will need to have a car, and that's it. Now I'll probably have to study and do exams to get a bloody driving license.
Well, of course, I unlike most drivers in my acquaintance, I have had to sit a test within the last couple of years, and all the you have to redo all the signs and all the roadcraft and all that sort of stuff. I mean, I've forgotten it all already, but I did have to go through it. But I was just thinking as well about transport and travel and going places and trying to save the impact, and the headline of British Airways putting to bed all their 747s, which is quite a big move. And, I find myself enjoying, I think we've maybe talked about this, but just enjoying the crystal clear skies that no contrails make possible. And I do find myself thinking, gosh, will I ever go back to Australia, for instance? I've been lucky enough to be there a dozen times or so, and I've flown a lot within Australia when I've been there, and I'm just not sure how I feel about doing that again. I'll forget all these principles as soon as somebody offers me some paid work there, but...
Yeah, I mean, as I think we already covered this at some point, it's, being able to pop back and forth between the UK and Italy was a pretty fundamental feature in my life, and who knows how it's going to go.
Yeah.
But, we have to embrace change. I mean, flying back to Italy was interesting because... I flew out on the second day that Ryanair was flying. There was very little traffic at the airport. I mean, I flew from Stansted concentration camp, and it was funny because the panels with the screens with the flights, usually there are 4 screens, and 3 were empty. Only the first one had probably it was 2/3 full, so not a lot of people, not a lot of flight. How many hours I spent sitting there and trying to figure out where all the places that you could fly to are, and on that day there were just dozen flights, and
it's gonna be interesting.
But but then it was fine. I mean, you have to wear a mask as you fly through, and 2 hours later, and everything was ahead of time because there was no congestion.
Yeah.
And 2 hours later was home. So, I mean, I wish it was always like that, to be honest.
I was going to say, it's like the old days when only rich people could fly.
Well, it was quite expensive to get to the airport because I decided to take a cab and not go with the public transportation.
Of course.
I mean, honestly, the whole situation in I found amazing how different the COVID situation is here in Italy.
Yeah, you were saying, yeah.
It's crazy, but everybody seems much more responsible about this thing here.
It's a bad time when the Italians are showing you how to behave.
Exactly.
Isn't it, really?
That's crazy. I mean, I remember before when this was about to start. Monica was in London with me, and she had a flight booked to fly back, and actually she flew back. She landed in Italy the day before lockdown started in Italy. It would have started 2 weeks later in the UK.
Yep.
But we were sitting there, and I was saying, I'm not sure. I mean, look, if all this situation goes badly, I'd rather be in the UK than in Italy. I mean, people here are more responsible. They had the NHS, and that little did I know.
Yeah, I know.
I mean, it's even this week announcements around face masks in shop, and yes and no and yes and yes, and but the people
yes
in the
and no, and then some silly World War II type jingoistic slogan that you're meant to all respond to. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, it's just I mean, here everybody, and look, if there is one place where people don't like following rules, this is Italy. But I mean, with the exception of one single car dealer who would just not wear a mask, and he would keep saying, well, we have disinfected everything, and saying, yeah, but this is not how it works. But pretty much everywhere else I've been, it's mask and plexiglass panels, and and everybody seems to be pretty cool. I mean, it's funny because by the time I got here, they had already been doing this for almost 2 months, so it's already become a new habit.
Well, it's I don't know how. It's a bit like the whole green thing and how that became as politicised as it did, and I'm still struggling a wee bit. I understand that people have varying degrees of willingness to be told what to do by the government, but I'm not doing it because I'm being told by the government. I'm doing it because it benefits myself and everybody else that I know. And why not? And so I've been wearing a mask every time I've gone out into shops or whatever since the start, really, and getting odd looks.
But it's crazy. I mean, there is people I know and like who come back with arguments, and they might not be healthy. You're breathing your own air, and it's like, oh, come on, really? I mean, it's ridiculous.
Yeah,
and it's pretty much and it's in the UK and in America. So
yeah, totally. Yeah, it's a cultural thing.
That's right. It's a must be something thing with the Anglo-Saxons. I don't know.
Oh, I don't. And we used to think we were the. I was going to say the master race. That's an unfortunate choice of phrase, but we used to think we were the thing that other people aspired to. That's not been true for some time. Yeah. I mean, look, UK is okay. Numbers are down, but not that way down. But they are improving. I wouldn't want to be in America right now. Well, not just that, but I mean the whole thing about these unmarked vans and unbadged, heavily armed people. Nobody's that sure who they are or what they are. Sort of wading into Portland. It's not a happy place, is it?
I don't know. I mean, look, there have 10 years ago, I was seriously thinking of moving there. And I have friends and family to some degree But right now, I'm not even. I mean, I wouldn't even want to be visiting, and I feel very bad about it.
I'm the same.
I mean, I love California and San Francisco and the Bay Area, and I have probably know more people there than anywhere else. But yeah, right now with the stories and the protests and COVID and police, is like, all right. Maybe.
Well, the way Trump's administration are throwing the weight around with the states, the individual states, and sort of riding roughshod over their decisions, I can't. You could easily imagine that splitting back into individual states at some point, because they're all big enough to do it.
Oh yeah, well, okay.
And then you could just pick and mix. You could decide which states you would go to. So you could just fly to California and not have to face the attitudes of coming through Washington or whatever. Bonkers.
Yeah, well, maybe we'll see. Everything. I mean, I don't think that at this point there will be any. Things will just go back to a more normal situation eventually, but we just.
Oh, will they?
Yeah, I don't think that it's no time for big wars and separations anymore. I don't think so. I mean, I think that there is a lot of posturing. I think that there is a lot of, look, even in our smaller environment, this whole Brexit thing, I still think that at the end there won't be huge. I mean, they will have to do something, go through the moves, and I mean, it's a global world. Whatever you do, whatever you say, everything is so interconnected, and you cannot unplug it. There is no unbundling of the modern economy. So yes, you can stomp around and say things and build walls and leave Europe, but everything will still be connected after you're done doing that. So
yeah, I tend to see a lot of what's happening as a sort of last kicks from a sort of dying way of looking at the world. At least that's the optimistic view. And even if they gain some short-term victories, it just seems inevitable, as you say, that we have this much, much more connected view of the world. And yes, we're using it at the moment to polarise and reinforce our narrow views of things in many cases, but in the long run, and you can't, I was about to say you can't put the internet back in its bottle. You can maybe fragment it into lots of little bottles.
Yeah.
I'm less sanguine about that than I used to be.
Yeah, I mean, it's let's say that the bright future that we had in mind some 20 years ago did not exactly happen. But on the other hand, 20 years is not a whole lot of time.
And it's not over yet.
So yeah, and it's not over yet. So there are cycles. I mean, we had to go through the cycle of big social media and big companies, and then, let's see what will happen. It's
certainly this seems to be speeding up the evolutionary rate, doesn't it? I mean, it's things that people were toying with the idea of are just now happening, like working from home or like changing the way we travel. It's forcing the rate of change, which, as long as we don't all careen off the cliff edge, may not be in the long term a bad thing.
I guess that this forced change is interesting because it's sort of rehearsals for future changes that we will have to adopt. So I think that it is interesting because it's like, okay, let's try to see what happens is everybody has to stay home. Let's try to see what happens and nobody has to fly. And the truth is what happened is not much. I mean, yes, there is going to be an impact on the economy and we'll have to see how bad that is. But society kept working. I mean, society kept existing. And if we haven't had this huge impact on economies so far, maybe we won't. I mean, maybe we'll just adjust with things and try to because yes, it is true we're spending less money, but which is slowing down the economy. But it's also true that we're spending less money because we need to spend less money.
And even in terms of the bad behaviour, he says making a value judgment, but the problematic behaviour on the internet and on social media, even that. I was reading a piece about the Karen meme and the way that spread and has grown, but how we come through it and get bored with it and think, well, maybe that's not a good way to spend our time. This guy was making the point that that has accelerated because we're all sitting at home with nothing else to fill our time. So that evolutionary process of becoming bored with the shit on the internet can't happen fast enough.
Yeah, that's interesting. So, and yeah, even learning cycles become, people had to learn to use technology in different ways. It would be interesting to see, because what I've realized is that the way we, for example, are using Zoom and other tools at work has changed since we started working from home. It has refined, we found new tricks, everything is kind of smoother and easier. So yeah,
even processes. Penny's job, my wife's job, they've got at the end of the day they have a quiz that each of them is responsible for coming up with the questions for, and it's just a little bit of social release and banter at the end of the day that helps relieve some of the pressures that build up from doing end-to-end Zoom calls kind of thing. I think a lot of people are finding those little interventions that just make it more bearable in some ways.
Yeah. So, and if you think that all this only happened in 3-4 months?
Yeah.
It would be interesting to try to figure out how many cycles we went through in these 4 months in terms of trying things, changing things, improving things. But
well, the other big one that we've come back to many times, but the whole thing about the truth, and I wrote the other day there that I keep thinking of giving up on Facebook, but one of the reasons I don't is that, quite contrary to most people's assumptions or expectations, I feel better informed because I'm there. Because I now, not buying newspapers or watching the news, get my sense of what's happening from, and people misinterpret this and think I'm saying that news is coming from Facebook. No, Facebook doesn't generate news. I get access to news through the people that I follow on Facebook. And because I follow a diverse bunch of people, some of whom are so diverse it curls my toes, I feel reasonably confident that I'm seeing different perspectives on what's happening in the world in a way that if I gave up on that and just relied on mainstream news, I would feel less well informed. So that was the post that I did. And that, again, I think is something that some of us have predicted for a long time, that reliance on third parties to tell you what the truth is has had some massive holes blown in it over the last few months. And learning ways to be more adept at critical thinking and better able to judge sources of information, and that all is a good thing as well.
I think that there is also the aspect of reach, in the sense that if you're just looking at the media yourself, you're probably looking at a relatively limited number of channels.
Totally.
If you're looking at the world through, I mean, as you were describing it, I was imagining, almost a multifaceted mirror. You're looking at the world reflected in this mirror where every facet is a different person.
And because of the fact I've travelled the world as much as I have, I now have good friends literally all around the world. So I will see their perspectives from their countries of what's happening in my country in a way that never gets into the mainstream media.
Yeah. And if you're careful at building this big mirror of many facets that are diverse and extended and spread around, you can have a very interesting view of the world. Yeah. On the same hand, if you only friend facets that are looking in the same direction, you will probably end up having a much smaller view of the world. I guess that the problem is that the experience that you or I are having on social media might not be what a lot of people experience of social media. So there is I think that what is interesting is that there is a good way of using social media, but unfortunately it's not the mainstream version of social media.
That's because we've been doing it for 20 or 30 years. And again, it was clear even in the BBC at work that it would take time for people to mature in their use of the platform we gave them. And it's the same in the internet. And, we've got vast numbers of people piling into something and going through the learning process that some of us took years to do. And that's partly what's causing the friction and the tension, but it doesn't mean that we won't come through it. I mean, I still remain optimistic that it is the glue that will help us to see how connected things are and to be able to join up and solve things. Just thinking back to the examples we gave, watching some of the science accelerating because the teams all around the world are able to talk and share in the way that they've never been able to before. That you still end up at that crux issue that it accelerates and amplifies bad things just as much as good things. Even down to what the definition of bad or good are.
But let's say that whatever you want to call it, it does reflect humankind, and it does amplify
the mirror.
Yep. All right. I think that.
Well, we managed to turn that round to be about technology in the end. That was quite remarkable.
Yep.
So on that relatively modestly optimistic note, should we call it a day, Paolo?
Absolutely. It was pretty optimistic. I mean, it's gonna be a brave new world.
Or else.
Thank you very much for listening.
See you next time. Bye-bye.